Well, welcome everyone to today's webinar titled Demystifying ISO 20022, the Future of Payment Formats. This is Brian from Strategic Treasurer, and we're pleased you could join us as we consider the opportunities offered by ISO 20022 and how to move toward embracing this payment format. Our speakers for today are Patric Leone, Product Owner Connectivity at Fides, Edar dos Santos, Head of Client Relations at Fides, and Craig Jeffery, Founder and Managing Partner of Strategic Treasurer. Welcome, Patric, Edar, and Craig, and I'll now turn the presentation over to you.
Thank you so much, Brian, Edar, and Patric. It's good to be here with you today.
Welcome, everyone.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
And thanks everyone for joining, whether it's late in your day, the middle of the day, or early morning. Thank you for spending some time with us on this really interesting topic, interesting on the technical side. And even if you don't like some of the technical aspects of it, I think you'll find it useful to know that type of interesting. Well, what are we going to cover today? We've got four sections on the screen. That is our agenda. This idea of migrating to ISO 20022, the reason and the timing. And so you'll hear Edar and Patric talk about the changes in all of the, let's just call them the back-end systems for payments and messaging across all banking sectors, and how that's becoming the new framework. And then that extends out to the users on the corporate side. So if you're a banker, you understand how that's happening internally. If you're a corporation, it's impacting you that way. So there's reasoning and timing for that. We'll look at the details of the format. What are some of the distinctions, the features and advantages? You've probably heard phrases like it's a richer format. There's more information that could be contained. It's richer information. It's a different format. The information comes with its own self-describing tag so that systems can read it. It's also layered and structured, far more flexible and able to contain more information than some of the, dare we say, legacy formats that have been around for 40 or 50 years. So we'll get into some of the details there, enough to make you interested, but not to send you rubbing your eyes with the level of detail. Then the next section will be about what do we need to consider as we look to embrace the new. Everything's moving to ISO 20022. Much of it has moved. How do we embrace that? How do we move forward in picking that up? So we'll talk through some of those items. And then finally, as is our custom, we have some key takeaways, some final thoughts to leave with you. So each of us will go through what is the way forward in terms of how we think and what actions may need to take place. That's our agenda, and let's continue. All right, why don't we start off? Edar, why don't you kick us off there? And I know Patric has some things to say as well.
Yeah.
So everyone's moving to ISO 20022. I already said it, so maybe you can help us understand why.
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much, Craig. I mean, from a client, like from a treasurer client perspective, right? The most important thing is that he brings the payments from A to B. So it means that the payments get processed from the corporate's ERP or TMS system in an automated and efficient way to the destination bank. So Patric, can you please explain us what treasurer needs are related to how to manage their data?
Sure, maybe let's take a step back and think about what is ISO 20022. Now, I like to bring this in context with languages. We here in the global economy, we talk all kind of different languages. Some of us even originate from countries with multiple language, like we here in Switzerland, or even have a vast amount of dialects. Now, imagine we would all communicate in our dialects. It would be chaos programmed. So therefore, in business, in international business, what do? We speak mainly English because it's a standardized global language that allows everyone or almost everyone to understand each other. And there's nothing else than ISO 20022. But to give you a little bit more context how this whole started is you have to think that commerce naturally started more locally. Therefore, also local clearing system, banks have developed formats which match the local needs. Audit, regulatories, bank processing needs, but of course also the user and end customers needs. For example, in the US, where do I put the check number in my payment file? And that is maybe very specific to a country or a local branch. Now, commerce advanced with globalization, of course, also cross-border payments advanced. And we were able to bridge all those different languages with developments, conversions, mapping, or enriching the data files. Now, this has not eliminated the problem that certain payments in the end-to-end process were not executed smoothly, so interoperability was not reached. Also, we had issues that, yes, we had certain converters, mapping, and so on and so forth in place, but still, we had certain limitations of applying needed data from one market to the other in the other format with the conversion. Data got lost, it was corrupted or shortened, cut off, truncated, and by having enough scale of this global and cross-border payments, we had to think of a better solution. And what we humans do, we like to get together and organize us. So is ISO, and you probably all know ISO in one way or the other because they are basically in every industry. They love to norm things, and be assured if they have normed something, I'm sure they're working on norming them. And that is what ISO actually did. This is the ISO 20022, and this is nothing else than a global, standardized, structured language for the payment industry. So we can all communicate and correspond with the needed data cross-border and have flexibility within this message to adjust data according to a structured and standardized way in the tree structure we're going to look afterwards. So short to say is XML or ISO 20022 is the format to rule them all because they can account for all the differences across markets and harmonize them so every participant exchanging those files or messages understand each other. So the future language basically will be XML or ISO 20022. And now maybe I can illustrate that you better on the next slide, that it is not just a new language which concerns Swift. You hear that Swift is rolling out a migration ISO 20022, and this is predominantly happening from the Swift Fin channel to the Swift Fin Plus channel, where we're going to see afterwards legacy versus XML formats. But just quickly as a pre-info, we had legacy formats on the Swift Fin street. I like to call it street because it's easier to picture. We have a street called Fin, a street called Phylect, and now a new street called Fin Plus. And now what they're doing basically is they're elevating the legacy formats from Fin to XML formats to Fin Plus. Why do they do that? Because change is needed in the markets, interoperability, richer data, so on and so forth. Everything we hear in the market about ISO 20022 is promised to solve a lot of headaches. So you have to start from the inner core. And Swift is a very inner core system where the banks communicate with each other. So they have decided that from financial to financial big, we will have to migrate the legacy from Fin to XML to Fin Plus by November 25. But this is not where the story ends. More clearing system all around the world are migrating to ISO 20022. And actually, in fact, most of them did already. For example, if you are aware of European markets, here we have the SEPA, and in SEPA we use XML or ISO 20022 already since 2008. So it's not a new story, it's actually quite old. And more clearing system, as you see here on the slides, are adopting if they haven't adopted. So the few ones coming still will be in the US coming March, and last but not least, of course, in November 25. So you see here, it's much greater than just a migration on Swift level because the clearing systems migrate. Also, the banks need to migrate their backend system. What does this mean? Backends on the banks currently, due to history and what I told before, through local processing and clearing, they had mostly a processing in the backend which processed legacy formats. Now they're slowly but surely all shifting to ISO 20022 native processing to handle the new language in an efficient way. So do, of course, also all the intermediaries, multi-bank platforms, such as Fides or also the TMS and ERP system. They're all adopting ISO, if they haven't done so yet, to align with the future language of payments. Next slide, please.
Excellent. But that brings us to our first poll question that'll pop up on the screen. There'll be some messages that Brian will insert in the chat box, so feel free to look at those. If you don't have access to the poll questions, you can't find them, your company may be blocking certain pop-ups. But the first poll question is on migration and where are you in migration? This is a select one option and then hit submit. We're already implementing ISO 20022. We're in the planning or discovery phase. We're aware but haven't started. We have little to no knowledge of ISO 20022 and unsure or not applicable. So hopefully that's it fits what you're selecting. If not, pick the closest one and go ahead and submit. So really appreciate that. The message in the chat box tells you how to find the poll questions. If you can't see that, hopefully you can see the chat if you can't see the poll viewer slide. We'll give
Now,
everybody, go ahead.
Sorry. Now, Edar, this is very interesting for me because I would like to see what's our audience response here towards our client's response. And maybe while we wait for certain answers, can you give us a feedback where our typical average client stands at currently in November 24 in this ISO migration?
Yeah,
Yeah,
if we
I
could
mean,
just, before you answer that, Edar, because I
yeah.
don't want to influence the poll, just
Oh, yeah, that's right. So
don't
let's
change what you say based on the
Very good,
poll,
yeah.
but just hold off for 1 second. I'll say one thing on the commercial side of things. If we have, let's say if we have 125 people, type the word Fides, Fides, in the chat box or the word poll. We'll go ahead and we'll share all of the poll results to the full audience afterwards with the full deck. Hopefully everyone submitted their items. Now, look away from the screen, Edar, and then answer Patric's question. No cheating. Or feel free to look at it however you like. So am I frozen?
No, that's good. So I mean, as I say, I mean, from the question from Patrick, I mean, it's I would say what 1/4, like 25%, they already obviously, let's say, started already, so they are perfectly, they perfectly know what ISO 20022 migration is, especially the bigger ones. It's clear you have also, let's say, the middle companies where, yeah, they are starting to reach out to the banks. They are asking the banks, okay, what the way or where are the banks, or what are the banks doing? But you also have the smaller ones, right, which have not even started yet, and they're obviously they are quite happy that we at Fides, we are already reaching out, right, also to the customers in order to inform them about the ISO 20022 migration, in order for them to have really enough time to build their own strategy and how they want to go through this migration.
Excellent. Yeah, some good data here. Thanks everyone for answering. Really appreciate it. Yeah, but bringing Patric back in. We have some Euler diagrams that are similar to Venn diagrams that lay out the ISO 20022, XML, and some of the standard formats. Patric, can you explain this code that we have on the screen? And you're on mute if you're trying to cover that.
Yeah, so apparently he's just reconnecting again. So I mean, at the end of the day, it looks like he's just out, so he will come in again. So what we see over here, right, is we do see in orange actually exactly the formats, right, which are tackled in the ISO 20022 migration. So we have the pane 001. We have the PAX 008 actually, and the CAMT 52 and CAMT 53 and CAMT 54. So those are actually the new formats, which will be replacing the old ones, which is then the MT 101, 103, MT 940, and 942s. So actually the MT 101, the old one over SwiftFin, will be replaced by a pane 1 V9 over SwiftFin Plus. The MT103s, those ones are being replaced by a PAX 008. And then we do have the COMT52, which is actually MT942. We are replacing that format with the COMT52, and the MT940 is being replaced by the COMT053.
Excellent, Edar. Yeah, so and thanks for jumping in for Patric too. Just a couple
You're
other
welcome.
things on this chart. The ISO 20022, as both Edar and Patric have said, is a broader standard, which is usually implemented with XML. That's where we see it most commonly occurring. And the way to pronounce it is look at those 5 numbers and say 20022. That's the cool way to say it. All the Europeans say it that way. All the people in Swift say it that way, and it becomes a lot easier than saying 20,022, 222, because it creates confusion. And then as Edar had mentioned, in the orange area, PAIN, for example, those codes stand for payment instruction, the PA from payment, IN from instruction. CAMT, you may not know that stands for cash management, but now you do. So there's different standards. And then Patric, you're back in.
Apologies, I had some technical issues.
Edar stepped in, and there was only a 12-second delay. So we're good. So he covered the standards in the orange. We haven't talked about XML on the side, or the I guess we did talk about some of the legacy formats on the right. Do you want me to finish this off, Patric? I know we've caught you.
It's okay. I mean, I can jump back in, but if you already had the talk to, so whatever you prefer. But I'll quickly jump in again. So maybe first of all is, I don't know if you have touched on that, but the relevance between ISO 20022 and XML. So we have talked before that the ISO 20022 is the language. Now picture that the XML is basically the letter you write in that language. So it's the file itself that you process to the bank to execute your payment desire. So you have the language ISO 20022, and XML is the letter itself. XML covers a lot of different formats, and this is what we see here below in those 3 bubbles: gray, orange, and green under ISO 20022. And as I understood, you already started talking about the PAIN, POX, COMTs, and they are basically the equivalent for the Swift ISO migration we are facing to the ones you see on the right-hand side in the white box, which are the old legacy. So just to bring you what is now the PAIN, the payment, it would be the MT101 on the right-hand side, whereas the MT103 is an intra-bank payment, which is in XML the POX. The COMTs are the MT940, 942, which you might know from account reporting, or in the US, the local format, the BAI on the very top, BAI2. So these are all account statements or account reporting statements, which translate, as mentioned, cash management formats in the COMTs. Now you see also on the left-hand side certain further XML formats. They are not part of this migration or within this treasury space of payments migration. Nevertheless, we have more XML, so more type of letters in the ISO language. On the green part, you see the JSON, and why JSON is important here, because you maybe also are touching on or thinking about APIs, and API is also able to exchange on the ISO language, just in the format or in the letter form of a JSON. But this would be then very specific, and is also not part of the before mentioned Swift migration from Fin to Fin Plus. So back to Swift, we would here concentrate and look at the orange ones, that they are the equivalent XMLs to migrate if you have the legacy ones in the white bubble currently processed through Fin. But we're going to look at this more in detail on the next slide.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, so having the messages actually implemented in XML will lead to a more combined, streamlined process with less maintenance efforts and more cost-effective process. Migrating to full XML processing will reduce potential errors, incompatibilities, and inconsistencies in data output, enhancing obviously efficiency and accuracy in financial processes. Additionally, it opens also the door for effective use of new technologies like AI. And switching directly to XML with the structured address requirements will also unlock many additional benefits of XML, such as enhanced data richness, faster processing, improved tracking and reconciliation. Means XML can streamline and centralize operations, can obviously reduce friction, human needed interaction, and indirectly lower costs, obviously. Hence, the XML will position the corporate or the client to a more efficient and connected financial future at the best value. So, Patric, also, I'm sure you will be able to give us even more details on why the corporates may switch to XML.
Oh, absolutely. There are a lot of use cases, and I'm happy to elaborate them on a further slide later, but maybe quickly here on the technical side, quickly before we go into the business use and the business use cases for treasurers. Here you see the structure on the left-hand side under the pane 001 V9 version 9. So this is basically the letter I was talking before, the XML, and this is how it looks. And if you look at it, you see kind of a tree structure in it. So there is always we call it a tags, starting here with this not bracket, but this pointy bracket, and it defines what will come under. So here, for example, it is a nice tree structure starting with the group header. This is the GRP, capital HDR, and underneath you have then the message ID, the creation date time, the control sum. So here you see already, it's not only the tree structure giving us structure in a message, but much more, it is each data knot basically explains what data will be in there. In the legacy formats or BAIs, you just had a bunch of data inside, and you or the processing system needed to have the logic, okay, as of which position is the count number, and where does the check number start, and where is the address? And that made it, of course, much more difficult, what was Edar pointing at, to extract the data for valuable processing, for automated processing, for sanction screening, for example. If we look at also other needs coming in the future, as of November 2026, most marketplaces will require structured address. And why is that so? Currently, on the legacy formats, you have a block with data, who is the account owner, and below just 2 lines or 3 lines just with the address data. However, it doesn't tell the system what is the postal code, what is the country code, what is the street, and what is the house number. Here in an XML, you see you will have then each individual data point saying, okay, what is the country code? Country code equals to US. What is the postal address? What is the street? What is the name? So it gives much more clear structure to a message. So a system who doesn't really know what to do unless you tell it what they have to do knows what data point is meaning what. And based on that feature, we then, or banks, can develop processing needs or automated processing. For example, on the sanction hits, you will identify directly which country is that payment for by checking the country code. And you don't have to develop certain mapping in your processing to extract the data, which country it is from, and then convert it to a responsive or a corresponding country code. So you see here we have much more possibilities of classifying what the data is. Furthermore, all those knots don't have a limitation or have a very, very big limitation. For example, we will see later also the remittance information. You can use up to 9,000 characters. In today's legacy formats, you had somewhere a limitation of, for example, in the MT101, you had a limitation of remittance information of 36 characters. So you can pack much more data in it. And why is that relevant? Because we live in a digital world in a couple of years ahead when this was developed, the legacy format. So we have much more need of data, not only because we use more data, also because of advanced regulation and needed to know principle by banks.
That was excellent, Patric. I'm just going to highlight on the screen. Hopefully you can see my mouse moving. a few of those items. So when he talked about, Patrick talked about this, the tree structure, you have the group header up here with the, the pointy triangles, and then you've got the group header end tag, right, with the slash and group header. Everything in here is part of that group header. And so visually you can see that. We don't normally think of MSG ID or whatever, but a couple other things why there's difference from the older one. You can see here's a control sum, $100 control sum. If you were to insert another record here, like Patrick said, with like address, maybe on the detail side, if you put, let's say, who signed it, you could insert it and the receiving system would be fine. Whereas the other systems where everything's positionally dependent, it's like in the fourth position, I'm looking for whatever the payment ID, and now you've put something in who signed it, it would break the old systems. Now these are more flexible systems. So, so excellent explanation, Patrick. Yeah, thank you. That brings us to poll question number 2. And what are the challenges to adoption? Which of the following do you see as the biggest challenge in adopting ISO 20022 in your organization? So we've got, integration with existing systems, to no challenges, or if you're not sure, or it's not applicable, maybe you're working at a fintech company and it's not a standard for, let's say, payables or treasury payments or information. Feel free to hit unsure or not applicable. So go ahead and select those, and we will see the results from there. In the chat box, there's following Fides on LinkedIn and following Strategic Treasurer on LinkedIn. We'd encourage you to go ahead and select those and follow on LinkedIn after you've submitted your poll question. And I'm told we also need 40 more Fides in the chat box to share all the results with everybody. So give everybody just a moment. And then while we're waiting, Edar and Patrick, how about you say how you pronounce the name of your company?
Fides. Now, I mean, to this question, I mean, I would really say integration with the existing systems, right, is one of the, let's say, challenge, and also contacting all the banks is obviously one of the biggest challenge that the corporates have. And yeah, because it takes time, it needs resources, and that's at least, I would say, the most of the feedbacks that I get so far.
Perfect.
Yeah, but here we go.
Pat and or Patrick, or either whoever would like to continue the discussion on these findings.
Well, exactly. Integration with existing system, that is a big pinpoint, because you have already established infrastructure. Your IT is already up and running. It's not like you have a new business just because we have a new payment method. And that is, of course, a big burden. Now you have to think of how can I, or first of all, you have to understand how is it impacting actually my current running system. And once you understand that, you have to fine tune or make adjustment, or potentially even buy add-ons on a TMS system which doesn't have yet the capability of XML. So this, we definitely see a big pain point here in understanding even what is needed and what is affected. Because ultimately, let's be honest, I mean, a treasurer or a CFO, he is not employed to understand data and IT infrastructure. But in these days, basically, you almost had to, or you have to, from all those variation of all those files and all those systems. Because without them, you weren't able to make a payment, even though you just wanted to make a payment out of your account. What I also see interesting is that employment training is very low. My advice is, as more as your employees are involved and as more as you train them on that subject, as smoother an implementation will go. And you will also work against the resistance factor. Every change brings also resistance with certain employees, and this is mainly because they are not knowledgeable about it. But once they understand, hey, here we talk only about the new language and we talk only about the new ledger, they can handle that information much better, rather than being scared of, oh, it's so technical, I don't know, it's for IT. So here I would see those main points as my comments to that, or feedback.
Thank you. Patrick, if we can continue on, but there was a question, is the migration to CAMP-T format is the CAMT format bank statement mandated by November 2025. One of you could take just a moment to respond to that.
Sure. No, fantastic question. I mean, exactly that. I mean, I understand that within the ISO migration, Swift, sorry, Swift migration, Swift informed us in June, July this year that they will focus on instruction messages. Instruction messages are payment messages. So therefore, it leads very good to this screen here. We are focusing within the Swift migration, the MT101. So here, if you do process an MT101 via Fin or Swift, you will be affected in one way or the other. Of course, if you have a corporate BIC, you can still send as a corporate BIC MT101s over the Fin channel to your correspondent banks. But if you use a financial institution or an intermediary with a financial BIC, you will be impacted directly. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, yeah, I have a corporate BIC, so I'm not impacted. Well, wrong, because as we saw before, the whole system is changing. So it's not only your bank or the intrabank communication, it's the clearing system, the bank's processing, the intermediaries, the forwarder, the TMS, the ERP. So the whole world of payments is actually evolving or changing. So therefore, if you want or not, you will be impacted in one way or the other. Hence, it might be wise to check already now your needs if you're directly impacted or not directly impacted as well, to see where are my touch points. Do I use MT101s? Does it make sense to migrate? Because again, it's not only about migrating and costs, it's all the opportunities which this richer format brings to you. If you use Pane 001, technically you already ISO conform. Pane 001 has different versions, however. And here we just advise you, please do check with your banks about the versioning, check internally. Do I need maybe to upgrade a version? Do I still run version 2? Now Swift is coming out of version 9. And is there even an added value? And to that I will come in another slide with the structured data elements. But do check, please, the versioning. Swift is using version 9 for the Fin Plus. And also as an information, Fin Plus is made for single payments, not for bulk payments. If you want to do bulk payments, you have to find a different channel via Swift. There's the FILAC channel, and there are other channels outside of Swift as well. And why would you do you think that Swift has limited on the Fin Plus single payments? Because Fin Plus is actually made for urgent payments or high value payments, the payments more than $1 million, or sensible cross-border payments where you as a treasurer or a company cannot afford that this payment is getting stuck just because you send through a bulk, and out of this bulk payment, 1 out of 1,000 payments gets stuck, the whole file gets stuck. So on urgent payments, you want to have a fast, smooth, and interoperable end-to-end processing. Therefore, it is advised for those type of payments to check the versioning and maybe check if it makes sense to elevate to the interoperable Fin Plus channel. MT940, so back to your original question, just quickly to kind of close the loop. MT940s or the CAMTs are not instruction messages. They are reporting messages. Hence, Swift has decided they will currently, at the moment, be out of scope. But be assured also they will come into scope because we are advancing, more and more data is needed. So we will feel a limitation there. However, it is not as tricky or as sensitive as an instruction message, because account report, well, the balance is $10. If you receive it in a XML, or if you receive it in a legacy format. However, if you make a payment, you maybe have to add a tax ID, or you have to add structured addresses, what we mentioned before. So that is the reason why Swift said, okay, for the moment, we still offer MT940, 942s, also between FI and FI BICs via Swift Fin. Nevertheless, I'm sure that sooner or later also here plans will be adjusted. Then last but not least, the COMT here on this slide. This is also already ISO conform, and also here, please do check the version we are using, as Swift via Fin Plus will allow or will implement the version 8. And yeah, so do check if you have other channels receiving COMTs. if it makes maybe sense to align all your comps to the same format. Why is that again? Because maybe your TMS system consuming those statements have an easier life if all those statements have the same versioning, because maybe you then need still little tweaks and twists here and there to align all the data needed for further processing of data, for creating reportings out of your account statement files, or to check your liquidity. So I see often treasurer taking the data from their TMS system and re-putting them in Excel to do management reporting, to do controls, so on and so forth. So it might be ideal to have the same base or same versioning with all the same data to avoid then again manual fiddling with this data in your reporting file.
Thank you, Patrick. Edar, so what are some of the advantages of ISO 2022? We've already covered some of them, but maybe you could highlight a few extra.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Craig. I mean, I will just repeat it again because it's really very, very important, right, to say it again. I mean, the corporate opportunities are right there by centralizing the operations, to automate processing, reduce maintenance of various formats across the banking landscape, and streamlining the processes such as handling false positives in sanctions, right? The corporates, they will have greater transparency and flexibility and more detailed description of transactions when they use the structured addresses and structured remittance information, which is given in a pane 1 V9 or even then in a CAMT 053 V8 format. Additionally, the enhanced data quality, right, will offer better liquidity management, forecasting, and cash flow optimization when doing domestic and cross-border payments. At the end of the day, this all leads to operational efficiency, where it allows the corporates the automation and straight-through processing and reduce the manual processing, which could lead to fewer errors and delays.
Yeah, I would just say one additional thing, the extensibility, this idea of a flexible format where you can add additional data has great promise. Now, the banks have to add the data. You want to have those discussions, but it provides for greater flexibility and extensibility over time, making it more valuable. Edar, any final wrap-ups on this?
Yeah, I mean, what concerns the operational industry efficiency, right? Which additional advantages does a corporate treasurer have here, Patrick? What can you tell us here about more advantages?
Thank you for the pitch. I will love to elaborate on that on the next slide, actually, which I prepared for you to bring that now into context. What we talk now about, where are really the use cases for a treasurer or for a company? Because at the end of the day, this all has to make sense to the ultimate customer, and these are corporates and customers or individuals, and not really the banks. And I feel always we are talking too less, the community is talking too less of the advantages for actually a corporate. So let me highlight a couple of them via our structured data information. So here I mentioned before, we will have now structured data in XML or in the pane 1 or in the COMT. And in the version 9, we have the structured data natively. So you maybe have used or you're using currently the pane 001 version 3. And yes, of course, also there you can apply structured data. However, it doesn't come native with that version. So you have to maybe do mappings, taggings, and adjustments to the file. Nevertheless, the most dominant or advantages for a treasurer I see in the structured address, it's not only to satisfy compliance and regulatories and the bank and whoever needs to know where you're sending money to. No, the banks can create better sanction filtering. So how often or how many hours does a treasury department use these days running after explaining who the beneficiary was just because I was sending it to my favorite restaurant, Cuban restaurant in New York? Now it will be hit because there is the word Cuba in there. However, it's in New York in the US. So if we have structured address now, what does the sanction team can check is the country code, and they see instantly it's the US, so they know Cuba has nothing to do with that. It must be only the name, so they can process it through. So the industry is really here betting on reducing a lot of sanction false positive, and which is of course an advantage by the bank, but a bigger relief for the treasurer. So is structured remittance information. This is basically the tool finally harmonizing the COMT and the PAIN, also the payment and account statement, because you can have up to 9,000 characters in the structured remittance information, and that is mapped one by one in the right version to the COMT. So now, if you receive a COMT back into your system, you can set up an automated reconciliation. You can reconcile up to 9,000 characters defined what should be the reconciliation. So reconciliation automation will be at 99.999%. And this will make a huge relief for a lot of teams, because how much effort did you do now by taking out the BAI and checking, oh, this BAI to which payment did it correspond? Often it is still done manually, actually. And with that, you can do it a full automatization. Structured purpose code and structured legal entity identifier. Now you have valuable data. We are in the era of data, and now you can harness the data. Speak of, you're not driven anymore by data as a treasurer, you are driving data. Now you can allocate much better your cash visibility. You know for which purpose, to which legal identity you send cash. So you can even automate or maybe enhance with AI cash forecasting, because now you have the data which can make much precise forecasting in the future. And last but not least, my favorite personally, the OBO, the on behalf of. Now, how many treasurers are using today already virtual IBANs? And how much use will that be in the future? Massive, because you don't need any more 100 physical accounts. You can have 1 or 2 accounts, maybe 1 in each currency, and then have a couple of virtual accounts belonging to that main account. Now, the problem is with legacy payments, you were not able to make payments from those virtual accounts because you didn't have a possibility to say, I'm paying on behalf of. Now with XML or ISO 20022, it's possible. You can actually use your virtual IBAN to make payments, and that is a game changer.
All right, and we're going to be picking up the speed. So everybody answering the poll questions, go ahead and select all that apply. What specific benefits would you like to receive from implementing ISO 20022 in your treasury operation? Go ahead and select all those that fit, hit submit. We will just share those with everybody afterwards. We're not going to comment on those just from a time perspective. Go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to get the next slide queued up just on the background for us, so we're ready to go. Give everybody just another minute. All right. Well, everybody has a chance to take a look at that. But on this slide, I'll start. Then Edar, you may jump in. This is our view
Sure.
of the Treasury aggregator function. We see Fides as a Treasury aggregator handling the messaging management from all kinds of banks and other places, delivering that to corporations in the way that they need, and same thing on the payment side, acting as a payment hub, going back and forth. And so this is the I'm working in a hotel with one screen, and I've moved the slide. So there we go. So where would a treasury aggregator fit? You know, it would fit between the corporation and all their banks, whether there's networks, whether there's a direct connection, like a host-to-host connection on the left-hand side, or whether it's a API, whether there's a regional payment network like eBix, a global messaging network like Swift. It handles the connections and the formats. And so that's the role that treasury aggregators play in the space. Edar, I didn't know if you had anything to add to that.
Oh, of course, where obviously we also play as well. So on this page, you can see that Fides Treasury Services is actually your perfect treasury aggregator, since we offer corporate centralized multi-banking solutions, allowing seamless global bank connectivity, efficient payment processing, and real-time financial reporting with only one connection to us, as you can see right there in the middle. We are connected to over 13,000 banks worldwide, supporting all possible transaction formats, right? Additionally, we ensure data protection and we meet regulatory standards, a crucial feature for corporates with high security needs. We offer tailor-made services to specify the corporate needs. We make the making it adaptable to varying treasury complexities. With us, you can automate treasury tasks, reducing manual work and in order to minimize errors, which can lower operational expenses. which have been said already during this webinar. And with tools like our OneHub, Fides centralizes treasury functions for optimized liquidity and cash visibility. So the platform that we have provides consolidated real-time insights across all bank accounts, improving financial oversights. These benefits makes Fides and our solution obviously ideal for corporates aiming to streamline treasury management across multiple financial institutions. And with our expert guidance offering, we assist corporates with technical integrations and strategic treasury management needs also during the current ISO 20022 migration. Fides will assist you and guide you starting through the full client onboarding and implementation journey until going live into production. And obviously, additionally, we can also help you on any needed conversion services if this is needed.
I think that, yeah, helping with conversion aggregators, doing those functions, and is very helpful. So that brings us to successful implementation. Maybe Edar, you can mention a thing or two. I think we're going to be really brief on this slide because we are pressing up against the time. So maybe either of you highlight the top
quick.
item.
Yeah, of course. I mean, first of all, be proactive. Each bank has its own roadmap, so therefore it really requires a phased approach in order to have enough time to build your strategy on this ISO 20022 migration. So I'll give over to Patric.
Yeah, in my point of view, from maybe more a technical point of view, number 5 and 7 will be key. So you have to think of as well, what is your data adjustment needs? Like, do you need to refine or update your data in view of the structured address? Do you have all the needed data in a structure saved in your ERP TMS system? For example, do you have the street, the postal code, the country code? Please do check if you switch from legacy to XML, if you need perhaps an IBAN instead of a short account number as you used to in the legacy. So here, please do also check the data, because you will need that correct data to be written in that letter.
Yeah, this full deck and this slide, of course, will be included. So Edar, Patric, and then if you could cover each of those columns, I'll cover the last one, and we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, sure. I mean, corporates should familiarize themselves with these impacts concerning the ISO 20022 migration. In my point of view, it's really crucial to recognize the potential of the XML messages and evaluate whether to incur implementation or migration costs now or face opportunity costs in the near future.
Exactly. And it goes hand in hand with, this is now, in my point of view, that time where a treasurer can drive data rather being driven by data. As mentioned before, a treasurer these days basically has to have a PhD in computer science to understand all those formats and all this data. By doing this with XML, you actually get the data you need to make right decisions or make right suggestions to the decision makers.
And then finally, this considering trading partners is who's on the other side of your communication, whether it's you're making a payment, what information needs to flow there, but it's the entire process. Consider the end-to-end, and then that's more easily supported if you use the right types of formats and languages. Thank you, Edar and Patric. Thank you, everyone, for attending. I'll turn it over to Brian for some final important announcements and a link.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Patric. Thank you, Edar. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. The CTP credits, today's webinar slides, and a recording of today's webinar will be sent to you within 5 business days. And for more on payment formats, be sure to listen to the Treasury Update Podcast, episode 277 with Fides by clicking the link in the chat box. Thank you, and we hope you have a good rest of the day.